This is the video explanation for the diagrams for week 6 dealing with noun clauses. We'll start off a little bit slow and then we're going to definitely get more complicated. So the first one, again, you follow the same pattern of finding the subject, determining the category of the verb, and direct objects, and then we'll look at more complicated elements from there. So in this one we have a compound subject. We have London and Paris, so those go on that bracketed structure, joined by the conjunction and. The verb is provide, which is an action verb. Provide what? The setting is the direct object. And then our two modifiers go underneath. We have the definite article, and then we have the prepositional phrase for a tale of two cities. That's telling us what setting we're talking about, so it's an adjective. Tale of Two Cities, even though it is a lot of words, it's a title of a book, so it's treated as one unit. It's considered a noun. So we put the preposition on the slant, and then we put the noun on the horizontal. And this is a pattern 7 because we do have a subject, transitive verb, and direct object. Now we get into our more complex things. We have a comma, which breaks up the two clauses for us nicely. So we're going to deal with one at a time and then connect them at the end. The first clause, we have work as our subject, is our be verb, novel is our subjective complement, it's a noun, and then the rest is kind of details, so we can right now identify that as a pattern 3 with a subject, be verb, and noun. We have our little things that go underneath. The by Charles Dickens is describing what novel we're talking about, which one, and so that one goes underneath novel. Then we skip to the next one, and I consider that as a separate unit, and then the last thing I do is connect them. So I'm going to treat this as its own sentence and diagram. So characters is our subject, appear is our action verb. Oh, sorry, that's not an action verb. Linking verb, that's one of those tricky ones that feels like an action verb but isn't. So that's a linking verb. And then we have especially distinctive. Distinctive is the adjective that's modifying characters. So that's the subjective complement that goes at the end. Especially is our adverb that is modifying the adjective. So it goes below distinctive. And then we put the definite articles in. So we have a pattern 4 with a subject, linking verb, and adjective at the end. So the only thing I have left to do is to connect them. And we have coordinating conjunction. So we connect our two verbs with a dotted line, and we put the conjunction on the line next to that. Story is our subject. We have a comma and we have a coordinating conjunction, but we don't have another subject. So we've got two verbs as our compound structure here. So we're going to put story as our subject, and then branching off from that main line to diagram our two verbs, we're going to put occurs on top, and then we're going to just finish that one. So we've got the during the French Revolution is a prepositional phrase that's obviously answering the question when, so that goes below that verb. And then we drop down to diagram the rest of the sentence. Takes is our action verb. Takes what? Advantage is the direct object, and then we have our prepositional phrase telling us what kind of advantage we're taking, so that goes underneath the noun that it's modifying. Preposition on the slant, noun on the horizontal, and the two modifiers for background underneath. And then we just need to determine sentence pattern. Story occurs, there's no direct object, so that's subject, and then a intransitive verb, making it a pattern 6. And then the bottom half, our verb is an action verb with a direct object, so that makes it a pattern 7. Okay, so we've got a couple of things going on here. We've got an and there, so we know we have a compound structure right at the beginning, and then we have a semicolon, so we know we've got two different clauses going on. We're going to deal with the first half to begin with. We have two subjects, Madame Defarge and Lucy, so we put that on our bracketed structure joined by their conjunction. Connect that to the main line, and then put our verb are, which is a be verb. And then we've got two major female characters. Characters is our subjective complement, a noun. So we'll put that on the main line. That becomes a pattern 3 with subject, be verb, and noun. And then we put all of those descriptors underneath that are describing characters. And we are done with that one. So now let's hop to the second half. We're going to leave, however, for just a minute and diagram the main excuse me, parts of the sentence. Contrast is our subject. Then we have a prepositional phrase. We have our be verb, and dramatic is an adjective. So I can diagram that really quickly and identify that as a pattern 2 because we have subject, be verb, and adjective as our subjective complement. Then we can deal with our prepositional phrase. Between them is talking about contrast. It's defining contrast, so we put that below that noun. And then we're left with connecting things and dealing with the however. However is a conjunctive adverb. And because it's a conjunctive adverb, these are on page 39, by the way. I have a hard time remembering them, and I check my list occasionally. Because it's an adverb, it's going to go underneath the verb of the clause it's attached to, which is the second clause. And then our two diagrams are connected by that dotted line with an X on it to show that there's not a normal conjunction connecting them, that it's the conjunctive adverb connecting them. Okay, this one we have two clauses separated by a semicolon. So we can treat these as independent clauses and just deal with one and then with the other. Madame Defarge is our subject. We have a be verb, and then we have two adjectives describing Madame Defarge. So those are our two subjective complements. So they're going to go in the bracket structure. And because we have subject, be verb, and then adjective, that first clause is a pattern 2. Drop down below to do our second diagram. Lucy is the subject. We have a be verb, and then we have archetype as our noun that follows that goes on the main line. And then we have a couple of prepositional phrases, one within another. You can treat those separately, but really because it's enclosed in quotes, we're going to treat Angel of the House as a unit. So the archetype of goes on the horizontal for the preposition. Angel of the House is the noun, so it goes on the horizontal. The two descriptors for Angel of the House go below. And then we don't have any sort of connector besides the punctuation. And so we can just connect those directly with the dotted line in between our verbs. Okay, moving on to the next one. Again, as I scan this, I see a comma that's dividing things nicely for me. And there are a few prepositional phrases. So I'm going to isolate those and deal with the main parts of the clauses first. Husband is our subject. Comes is the verb, and to come is an action verb. So we then have a prepositional phrase, and there's nothing that follows in that clause, so there's no direct object. So this is going to be a pattern 6 because we have a subject and an intransitive verb. We can put the possessive Lucy's underneath husband, and then it tells us where he comes from where he comes. And so we're going to diagram that below the verb. He comes from a family, and then it has the 3 modifiers below. The second clause, we'll do that and then deal with how we're going to connect things. He moved is our subject and action verb. There is no noun that directly follows, many years. But that's answering a question of time. It's not moved what. So even though years is a noun, it's not going to be the direct object. So we have another intransitive verb. So I could stop right there and say this is a pattern 6 before I even go on and deal with my prepositional phrases. He moved where? To England, goes underneath. And many years is functioning as an adverb because it's answering the question when. There's nothing that goes on the slant. So the noun goes on the horizontal, the modifier many, and then before the revolution is telling us, is describing years. So that is diagrammed below there. So we connect our verbs with a dotted line, and we have the coordinating conjunction but, so it goes, it's attached to those, the dotted line connecting the two clauses. Okay, we keep getting more and more complicated here. He returns is the subject of our first one, and we have a whole bunch of prepositional phrases before we hit our comma. So I don't need to worry about any of these. These are not acting as adjectives. They're not going to be on a pedestal. So all I need to know for my first diagram to identify it is subject and transitive verb, and it's a pattern 6. So he returns where? To France is our first prepositional phrase. Why? Because he receives a letter. So upon receipt goes below of a letter is describing what's he receiving, and what letter we're talking about is the one from a loyal servant. So this is kind of one of those waterfall things that they just flow one down from the other. And we get to the end of that one. So then we get to the next clause. He is our subject. Finds is an action verb. Finds what? Finds himself is the direct object. It's a reflexive pronoun, but it's receiving the action of the verb. And then we have a whole bunch more prepositional phrases. In trouble with the citizens of the revolution. This is a great example of where you're going to do a pedestal. In trouble it meets the 3 criteria for a pedestal. So it is a prepositional phrase at the end of a sentence. So it's in the predicate. It follows the verb. And it's functioning as an adjective. And you can figure that out either by substituting it with a 1-word adjective, maybe endangered is the closest one I can think of, or think of it as literal or figurative. He's not literally in a place called trouble, so it's figurative. So this one goes up on the pedestal at the end. So it's functioning as an adjective. So because we have a subject, action verb, direct object, and adjective as the objective complement, we know that this is a pattern 9. And then we just kind of go on from there. What kind of trouble is he in? We're defining trouble, and it's trouble with the citizens, and what citizens of the revolution. So those also kind of cascade down. And then we don't have, we do have a connecting here. We've got the conjunctive adverb then. Then he finds himself. Because it is a conjunctive adverb and it kind of indicates an idea of time, it goes below the verb of the second clause. Our dotted line connects, and then we have an X because our conjunction is below the second one. Okay, this one looks refreshingly simple compared to the last few we've done. So husband is our subject, faces is our action verb, faces what? He faces execution is our direct object. And then we hit our comma. So we can stop right there. We go back and put in the possessive, and we're done with the first clause, which is a pattern 7. We move on, and we have family is our subject of the next clause. Has committed are the verbs. Committed what? Injustices is the direct object. Another pattern 7. We add in our possessive and our modifier under injustices, and we've got that one done. So all that's left to do is to connect the two. And that's, we've got the 4 as our coordinating conjunction. So the dotted line connecting the 2 verb has the 4 attached to it. Okay, almost there. Lucy and their daughter is our compound subject. There and Young is describing daughter, not Lucy, so it goes under the daughter. Then we have it attached to the main line to show that it's the main part of our diagram. And then we have a compound verb too. So we immediately branch off into another bracket. Travel is our verb, action verb, and search is another action verb. They're both followed by prepositional phrases, so they don't have direct objects. So you put those under the verbs, and they are both pattern 6s. And then finally, we have Sydney Carton as our subject. Sacrifices is our verb. Sacrifices what? His life. And why? The prepositional phrase answers a why question, so it goes underneath. That's a pattern 7 with subject, transitive verb, and direct object. All is our subject of the next one. We have a phrasal verb, turns out, which means to end. How is it turns out well. And when, at the end of the novel. So both of those are functioning as adverbs. They go below the verb. And then we have our coordinating conjunction so, which is connected to our dotted line, which joins the 2 verbs of each clause.